Hello, my gorgeous angel reading queens. I hope that you're having the most wonderful day of your entire life. I'm very excited for this video. We get to do a book haul and also unhaul. I have bought quite a few books lately for spooky season because this is my favorite season, as we all know. And that also means I have to make some room on my shelves, which is getting rid of some books that I wasn't super crazy about. So make sure you have a cozy beverage, whether that's a coffee, tea, drink some water if you haven't drank any water yet today. And let's talk about some books. Okay, I think what I'm going to do is flip back and forth between a book that I'm hauling and a book that I am unhauling. So we will start with a book that I hauled recently, and that is Wuthering Heights by Emily Bronte. This book is so stinking beautiful. I've seen multiple people with this edition, and I saw it and I was literally starstruck. It was so beautiful. And then I went to Possiman Books when I was in Boston with Nikki, and I saw this edition and I was like, yeah, that needs to happen. Did I try to read it? Yes. Did I already DNF it? Also yes. It's a book that I will definitely return to. I tried to buddy read it with my friend Sarah, and I was just getting lost in the sauce of this writing style. The writing style is very old-timey, and I just had no idea what was going on. And then my friend Sarah was like, doesn't your edition have like footnotes of what certain words mean and like X, Y, and Z? This edition does not, because it's the Penguin Classics Deluxe edition, and that's the one that has these stunning covers and then also the back. I have not given up hope. I will probably try to return to Wuthering Heights at some point. I will spark note it and I will return to it, but this is the first book that I have hauled recently. Then the first book that I'm going to be unhauling is Trail of Lightning by Rebecca Roanhorse. I read this and I ended up giving it 2 stars. It was a big disappointment for me because I was very much looking forward to this book. I picked this book up solely because Allie from Hardback Hoarder recommended it, and it just wasn't for me. I felt that the main character was so unlikable for no reason, and she was going out of her way to sabotage the relationships with the other characters in the book. She was purposely self-isolating, and it got to the point where it was just really like unwarranted and annoying. And then also the romance in this book wasn't my favorite, and I will just leave it at that for no spoilers. This just wasn't for me. I will be unhauling it, hopefully to someone who will enjoy this book a little bit more. The next 3 books that I'm hauling are all part of a manga horror series called The Promised Neverland. I have been hearing amazing things about this lately. I know that Katie Colson has read this and she really, really loves it, and then also Jordaline from Jordaline Reads. The last horror manga that I read was Happiness, which was a vampire horror manga, and I was obsessed, y'all. So I picked up The Promised Neverland. We follow our main characters, who are Emma, Norman, and Ray. They're the brightest kids at Gracefield House Orphanage. They have a very comfortable, good life. It's not like a horrible life at this orphanage, but one day Emma and Norman uncover the dark truth of the outside world they are forbidden from seeing. I think what happens, if I'm remembering from Katie Colson correctly, some of the kids get adopted. Our main characters figure out what happens to those kids when they get adopted and like leave the orphanage, and it's much darker than one would think. So I picked up the first 3 editions to see if I'm going to be obsessed with this series. I think I will be. The next book that I'm unhauling is Peluda by Melissa Lozada Oliva. This was a collection of poetry, and I read it. There were some poems that I did really, really enjoy, some specific lines in poems that I really, really enjoyed, but overall I wasn't like obsessed with this collection, so I'm going to be unhauling it. Next book that I've recently hauled is Sorcery of Thorns by Margaret Rogerson. I feel like I've talked about this book a little bit already in my autumn TBR, so I won't get super into the synopsis, but basically our main character Elizabeth has been raised as a librarian of sorts in this library where the grimoires and the books are sentient and they can become monsters. Well, one of the books becomes a monster and it runs away, and she has to go after it, solve the problem. Any books that have to do with libraries and grimoires, it makes it seem like there's going to be some like witchiness to it. I am very, very excited. Also, after reading An Enchantment of Ravens by Margaret Rogerson, I had to pick up Sorcery of Thorns. I feel like this is her more well-known book. I've heard at least a lot more people talk about Sorcery of Thorns than An Enchantment of Ravens. Love it! I will be unhauling To Kill a Kingdom by Alexandra Christo. I read this book in the summer, and I think I ended up giving it 3 stars. I just wasn't super crazy about it. This is a kind of dark fairy tale retelling of The Little Mermaid, except in this book there are mermaids who are much more just like fish people, and then there's sirens who are the humanoid underwater creatures. So our main character is Princess Lyra. She's siren royalty, and she is the most deadly siren of them all. She loves killing human princes. So every year on their birthday, to like celebrate their birthdays, the sirens kill people.
Right? I mean, why wouldn't you? Okay.
She makes a mistake one year, and her mother, the Sea Queen, punishes her by turning her into a human. She has to deliver Prince Elian's heart to the Sea Queen by the winter solstice or remain a human forever. And she hates humans, and she hates being a human. I think that the author did a good job creating the atmosphere of this book, but in terms of the plot, it felt very just recycled to me. Like, I don't remember a lot of details from this book. I never felt like obsessed with this book. It felt like a lot of the other YA fantasy romances that I've read. Like, nothing was super unique about this book. The next book that I am hauling, which again, I also talked about this book in my autumn TBR, is The Bone Witch by Rin Chupeco. This is the first book in the Bone Witch series. It is obviously about witches, but our main character's name is T, and she is a very specialized witch because her power is necromancy, which just sounds so creepy, meaning she can bring the dead back to life. That is the most spooky witch thing I've ever heard coming into autumn. So like, obviously I want to read this book. She basically has to master her power and be able to conquer the beasts who will submit through no other force. She must be strong, stronger than she even believes is possible, because war is brewing in the 8 kingdoms that will threaten the sovereignty of her homeland and threaten the very survival of those that she loves. It's kind of the chosen one trope where she has to master her power to save her land and her people, and I'm here for it. Okay, this next book is going to be unpopular opinion. Don't come for me, but I'm going to be unhauling Ace of Spades. There were elements that I really, really loved about this book. I loved how the author really calls out race and privilege in this book. I thought it was absolutely excellent. I really, really loved Devin Richards. I wasn't super crazy about Chiamaka, to be honest. Devin was so brutally honest. I loved the social commentary that the author really tied into his character and his plotline, but where I really just wasn't loving Chiamaka, and she is the other main character in this book, that's where it was kind of falling flat for me. The premise of this book is that we have these 2 main characters. They are going to an elite private academy called Niveus, and they are 2 of the school's senior prefects. It looks like their year's off to an amazing start, but then they start getting blackmailed by this mysterious figure called Aces, and they show no sign of stopping. What seemed to be like a sick prank quickly turns into a dangerous game with all the cards stacked against them. Can Devin and Chiamaka stop Aces before these things become incredibly deadly? Basically, this person is out to tarnish their reputation, which is going to severely impact their future. It's kind of like a high stakes thriller, but it just wasn't for me, so I will be unhauling this. The next book that I will be hauling that I am so excited about, I know a lot of you guys have told me that I'm going to absolutely love this book, and that is Lore Olympus by Rachel Smythe. This is the graphic novel that was first released on Webtoons, and you can still read this book for free on Webtoons, but this is just the printed version, and honestly, the art style is so stinking cute, and this is a Hades and Persephone retelling, which I am always going to be absolutely obsessed with Hades and Persephone, so I am very, very excited to get to this one. My next unhaul, and I'm really sad that I didn't love this book more, is A Dark and Hollow Star by Ashley Shuttleworth. This is a YA fantasy that's supposed to have a really stunning sapphic romance in it, and we basically follow like multiple POVs in this book. So we have a tempestuous fury exiled to Earth from the immortal realm and hell-bent on revenge, a dutiful Fae prince determined to earn his place on the throne, and the prince's brooding guardian burdened with a terrible secret. They're 4 queer teens, each holding a key piece of truth behind the murders that are going on, and must form a tenuous alliance in their effort to track down the mysterious killer behind these crimes. If they fail, they risk the destruction of fairy and human worlds alike. If that's not bad enough, there's a war brewing between the mortal and immortal realms, and one of these teens is destined to tip the scales. The only question is, which way? There was a lot going on in this book. I think I read up to page 150 and I was still so lost about what was going on. So you jump between like 4 or 5 different perspectives, and in every perspective, they have their own thing going on. And it wasn't coming together. Like, by 150 pages, or maybe it was 200, they still hadn't come together in any way. So you're basically following 4 or 5 separate plot lines. There's only one perspective that I really, really loved, and that was Nausicaa's perspective in this. She is a tempestuous fury who is exiled to Earth from the immortal realm and hellbent on revenge. But it got to the point where I was like so bored with what was going on because there was no connections between these characters, and it just felt like the author was going into so much detail about things that literally didn't matter. And it just made my brain hurt. If I'm being honest, it was way too confusing, and so I ended up DNFing it. I have no interest in returning to this. So, unhauling for sure. The next 2 books that I'm hauling, I'm going to speak about together because they pair very well. The first one that I'll talk about is The Island of Dr. Moreau by H.G. Wells. This is a creepy sci-fi horror book, and I didn't realize this, but H.G. Wells is often referred to as the father of science fiction. He was one of the first authors to write a type of speculative fiction which referenced the advancements in science of his time. The Island of Dr. Moreau is the account of Edward Prendick, an Englishman who finds himself stranded on an island in the South Pacific after being shipwrecked. The island is home to Dr. Moreau, who is an eminent physiologist from London who has fled England when his gruesome experiments in vivisection had been publicly exposed. Prendick soon learns that Moreau has continued his experiments on the island, transforming animals into human-like hybrids called beast folk. Worrying that he may be next on the list of subjects, Prendick flees into the jungle trying to escape whatever gruesome plan that Moreau may have in store for him. The Island of Dr. Moreau, which was meant as a commentary on Darwin's theory of evolution, is a most uncanny prediction of the ethical issues raised by the science of genetic engineering in modern times, and a cautionary tale of the potential dangers of science when left unchecked. That sounds so creepy. I'm sorry, that is so scary, and it's very short as well, so this is just a short story. It is 90 pages, and I cannot wait to get to this. And the other book that I'm going to talk about that pairs with this one is The Daughter of Dr. Moreau by Silvia Moreno Garcia. I read Mexican Gothic last October and was obsessed with her writing style. So I had to pick up The Daughter of Dr. Moreau, which just came out this year, I think last month. And this book is a sort of retelling or a spin-off of The Island of Dr. Moreau. So in this book, we follow Carlota Moreau, a young woman growing up on a remote, luxuriant estate, safe from the conflict and strife of the Yucatan Peninsula, the only daughter of a researcher who is either a genius or a madman. Montgomery Lawton is a melancholic overseer with a tragic past and a propensity for alcohol, an outcast who assists Dr. Moreau with his experiments, which are financed by the Lizaldes, owners of magnificent haciendas and plentiful coffers. The hybrids are the fruits of the doctor's labor, destined to blindly obey their creator and remain in the shadows, a motley group of part human, part animal monstrosities. All of them live in a perfectly balanced, static world, which is jolted by the abrupt arrival of Eduardo Lizalde, the charming and careless son of Dr. Moreau's patron, who will unwittingly begin a dangerous chain reaction. I cannot even deal with my excitement for these 2 books. And can we just talk about these covers for a second? They're doing the most, and I am so here for it. Now I'm unhauling this book, and it's called American Dirt by Janine Cummins. I'm not gonna lie, I bought this book last year and then I never ended up getting to it. This story is talking about basically this family that lives in Mexico. She runs a bookstore. She has a son, Luca, who is the love of her life, and a wonderful husband who is a journalist. The husband gets into a little bit of trouble with the cartel because he's a journalist and he published something that went a little bit too far, and the cartel is now upset with their family and they need to flee to the United States. I'm just deciding to unhaul it because it's been a year and I still haven't really picked this up, and I have no desire to. And also, this author has come under some criticism for writing this book through a Mexican's perspective. I don't know all the ins and outs of it, but I will be unhauling this book. Then I most recently hauled this book as well. It's called The Depths by Nicole Lesperance. This is our Confused Queens book club pick for October, and that live show will be hosted on my channel the first week in November, and I am so excited to get to this book. It just was released this September, so this month. It doesn't have to deal with human-animal hybrids, but it kind of has similar vibes to these two books, like now that I'm thinking about it. So this book, we follow Addie, who is forced to tag along to the remote island on her mother's honeymoon, which is so awkward to begin with. She isn't thrilled about being trapped there for 2 weeks. The island is stunning, with its secluded beaches and forests full of white flowers, but there's something eerie about this place. After Addie meets an enigmatic boy on the beach, all the flowers start to turn pink. The island loves you, he tells her, but she can't stop sleepwalking at night. The birds keep calling her name. And there's a strange little girl in the woods who wants to play hide and seek. When Addie learns about 2 sisters who died on the island centuries ago, she wonders if there's more to this place, things only she can see. Beneath its gorgeous surface, Ualele Island is hiding dark and tangled secrets, and if Addie doesn't unravel them soon, the island might never let her go. The final book that I'm unhauling, and I don't think that this one will be very surprising, is The Maidens by Alex Michaelides. I read this book when it first came out, which was last year at some point, and I loved his first book, The Silent Patient. I really enjoyed Mariana's perspective. I thought she was a really fun thriller main character to follow. And then I also really enjoyed Edward Fosca's character, who is the murderer in this thriller. He's a very unsavory professor at Cambridge University because he has this little group that is called the Maidens, who dress in all white, and they're very they're girls that are like obsessed with him, and they have their own like study group, but it's questionable of whether or not he's like sleeping with these girls or not. And then we have a student at Cambridge University who gets murdered. I liked it. I didn't think it was as good as The Silent Patient, but I still enjoyed it. I think I gave it like a 3 or a 4 star. I really enjoyed the atmosphere of this book. Again, if you're someone who really enjoys dark academia setting, it has Greek mythology tied in here as well. Like, it's very true to dark academia. I do recommend it, but I'm going to be unhauling it because I'm never going to reread a thriller once I've read it. You know what I mean? Because I know what happens. And then the final book that I am hauling is The Priory of the Orange Tree by Samantha Shannon. Y'all, this is my year where I'm conquering my fear of chunky books, and I figured, okay, I have to read the longest book in history. Just kidding. But one of the longest books that I'm aware of that is on my TBR list. I have to read it this year because this is the ultimate challenge of conquering my fear of chunky books. This book is an epic fantasy. It has to do with dragons. There's a sapphic romance in here. We follow the unwed Queen Sabrin IX. She must conceive a daughter to protect her realm from destruction, but assassins are getting closer to her door. Then we also have Iad Duryan, I hope that I said that correctly, who is an outsider at the court. Though she has risen to the position of lady-in-waiting, she is loyal to a hidden society of mages. Iad keeps a watchful eye on Sabrin, secretly protecting her with forbidden magic. Across the Dark Sea, Tanae has trained to be a dragon rider since she was a child, but is forced to make a choice that could see her life unravel. Meanwhile, the divided East and West refuse to parley. The forces of chaos are rising from their sleep. So we have war, we have dragon riders, we have a sapphic romance. What more could you ask for? And that is it, my friends. I hope that you enjoyed this video. If you did, please be sure to give it a big thumbs up, subscribe to my channel to see more. I post every Sunday and Thursday. I also do monthly reading sprints, and I am also a co-host of the Confused Queens book club, where we pick some mood ready books depending on the month, and we have a lot of fun. So I will leave the link to our Discord in the description box below. Thank you so much. I'll see you in my next one. Bye, friends.